G'day guys, welcome to a new episode of Bogans Guide to Wine. Got a bit of a special one today. I've come down to Bali to meet James Kalleske, formerly of the Barossa Valley and now a resident of Bali.
That's right.
And you're bringing your skills to Bali and producing some pretty good quality stuff.
Some interesting wines, yeah. So we've got two ranges. We won't taste all of them today. We've got two islands, which is imported grapes from Australia, frozen and vinified and aged and finished here.
So is that a big process to bring over? Because you'd have to bring over.
Yeah, logistically it's a big process.
Are you talking sea container loads or?
Multiple sea container loads every vintage, but the winery is quite small because typically we produce the local wines all year round, so it's about a third of the size of a typical winery in Australia or anywhere else in the world.
So there are vines in Bali?
Yes, so we've got the Two Islands range from imported grapes, and then we've got the Hatton range, which is totally 100% from Balinese grapes.
Okay.
I can tell you the grape varieties, but most people haven't heard of them. So one is called Provolone Biru, it's a white grape. And that's the main grape in our sparkling.
And where would that originate from?
Well, Provolone is in Indonesia, an area, so that's as far back as they can trace it. We have done DNA profiling.
So it's really a local grape?
It is quite local,
okay.
With an interesting flavour, a unique flavour. Then we've got...
Shall I crack this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Back continue on.
Then we've got a grape called Belgia, which is another white grape, and then a third grape called Alphonse Le Valet, which is a red grape. And so they're the three we grow here. And then from the Australian grapes, we're actually producing Sauvignon Blanc, Shiraz from Barossa Valley.
Was a Barossa fan?
Adelaide Hills, Chardonnay, so Cabernet Coonawarra, so everything.
Yeah, right, okay. So it's going to be, so it's like a greatest hits of Australia made in Bali.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got offered the opportunity and thought, there's so much room for experimentation. And
that was going to be my next question, whether you came out here off your own back, if you're an entrepreneur on your own basis, or whether you were...
Unfortunately, no. I was scouted by them, but it didn't take too much consideration to move my family over here, and that was 5 years ago.
Right, okay. Because we did actually meet about 5 years ago.
And yeah, that's right.
This was before Bogans Guide to Wine was actually happening. We went into the, I guess the actual winery. It was surrounded by barrels and.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. It was a bit of an early start for.
Oh, now I've got you doing a wine review at like 8 o'clock in the evening,
yes.
Straight off an airplane. But cheers.
Cheers. So I'm not really big on the sparkling. What do I sort of should be looking for here?
Oh well, this is a method traditionnel, method champenois, but we're not allowed to call it that legally. So it's been fermented in that bottle and aged for a year on lees, and then hand riddled, and everything's done by hand. So it should be toasty and buttery.
Get into the toast and straight off the nose there.
Yeah, from the secondary characters. And the Provolone Biru grapes in there, a very unique flavour. You're probably getting some lemon and a few kind of tropical fruit characters.
Oh, great. You did right. This is quite interesting, isn't it? This is normally, I'm not. Like I said before, I'm not really a big fan of the bubbles because I have trouble fighting the bubbles to get to the flavour.
Yes, yeah.
But this has got a lot of flavour coming.
It's got nice fine bead as well. It's not so you don't put it in your mouth.
So bead is.
The bead is the sort of the size of the small bubbles.
Okay, so it's about the quantity, or is it about the quantity?
It's about the size, not the quantity. So when we make cheap sparkling wine and we pump it full of CO2, we get big bubbles of carbon dioxide, like you would get in soda water. And when we make it by hand, like this traditional method traditional, we get nice fine, creamy kind of bubbles.
Yeah, no, they're very, very fine. Looks great.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, because I knew that you did a bit of the importing, once again I didn't realise how much importing, but this having the Balinese, Indonesian grapes, I reckon that's, I've done a bit of travelling, I've tried wine in China, I've tried in Borneo, been in Thailand, and normally the local stuff's pretty tough to get your mouth around, so normally
it can be,
you just become a beer drinker when you go to these places.
That's right.
Yeah, this is
Well, look, Asian countries aren't, especially this close to the equator, are definitely not known for producing good wine.
Yep.
In fact, lots of them are known for producing pretty terrible wine. And there is a reputation to get over, but we're doing a great job, and so are other countries. Thailand specifically, I would highly recommend to taste some wines from there. But I mean, Hatton Wines, we produce the two ranges, but we actually produce close to 70% is from the local grapes,
wow,
and 30% is from the imported grapes. There's a big market for it for tourists.
So, well, speaking not to tourists, because I've been to a couple of wine bar shops in Bali, and we've come down for a bit of a play around. Super expensive.
Yes.
Like just stuff that you know you can pay $15 for back homes on the shelf for $55 plus dollars, you know, so it's pretty hard to get your hands on a decent priced bottle of wine. How do you stand up against that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's, I guess, why it came about, because the import tax is so high, and it's about $35 equivalent Australian for a bottle of Jacob's Creek standard range. So we're producing this, for example, is fermented, it's Barossa Valley grapes, Shiraz. It's aged in 100% new French oak. It's a serious wine, and it costs what you'd be paying for a Jacob's Creek over here, because we're producing locally. So that's why it works.
So when someone's come to Bali, most of our viewers will be, what can they expect to pay?
For our reserve, it would be about $35. For our standard 2 islands import, it's about $220.
Yep.
And our local range is just under, it's about 180, so 18.
So, mad good value compared to what you're going to be...
Yeah, it is. And I'd also highly recommend, there's nothing more depressing than going to a restaurant on holiday and having a Jacob's Creek that you're overpaying for, because you've had it a million times. It's not bad wine at all.
You see it all the time though.
Exactly.
It's nice when you're going away. If you go to a particularly nice restaurant, you want something a bit nicer, but
something a bit interesting.
And this is really interesting stuff. Because I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you've just hopped off a plane as well for a 6-hour flight, so
So how do people find your wines when they come to Bali?
Most people are really surprised. Occasionally you get people who aren't into it, but you can't drink our local wines and expect it to taste like a Chardonnay from Australia or from Chablis. So once you have an open mind, perfectly fine. We do focus more on whites, and that's...
Well, it's more white wine weather.
So hot here. And also they just grow better here, actually. But we're a bit limited because we have 3 grape varieties we can play with instead of the 10 that normal people have. So we're doing huge amounts of vineyard trials.
Do you make a still out of this particular grape?
Yeah, I do. A distillation, you mean?
Well, you do.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant a distillation. Because I do that as well. I make a brandy, which is absolutely fabulous.
Well, next time I come, we're going to go to the winery and
because that's not actually for sale at the moment. But that's a new thing.
And availability, like where can you buy this stuff?
Honestly, you've been to Bali before, you see Hatton Wines signs and 2 Island Wine signs everywhere. There's basically not a warung or a restaurant that won't sell our wines. You can also buy them in supermarkets.
Easy to find.
Really easy to find.
Alright, well, this has been a glorious thing to meet you again and very educational. I know you've got people to go see and things to do, so I won't hold you up much longer. Might stick around and have another glass of wine.
Certainly, we have 2 more to taste actually.
Beautiful. Till next time, guys, this has been Bogans Guide to Wine. This is James Kalleske from 2 Hands and Hatton Wines.
Good enough.
Till next time,
Cheers.
this has been Bogans Guide to Wine. Get it in ya.
Tell you that for free. I hate it when you cry.
Okay. Okay.